Senator Bob Menendez has been found guilty on all counts in his federal corruption trial. The jury returned the verdict just a short while ago on the third day of deliberations. The charges include bribery, extortion, wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and acting as a foreign agent for Egypt. After the verdict was read, Menendez maintained his innocence.
I'm deeply, deeply disappointed by the jury's decision. I have every faith that the law and the facts did not sustain that decision and that we will be successful upon appeal. I have never violated my public oath. I have never been anything but a patriot of my country and for my country. I have never, ever been a foreign agent, and the decision rendered by the jury today would put at risk every member of the United States Senate in terms of what they think a foreign agent would be.
We have team coverage for you. CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion has been following this case for us. She's on Capitol Hill. And CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson is with us to provide analysis. But we want to start with CBS News New York reporter Christine Sloan. She's outside the courthouse in Manhattan. She was inside the moment the verdict was read. Christine, how did the senator and his co-defendants look when that decision was read?
Well, certainly it was an extraordinary moment. The judge had warned everyone to stay calm and not to have any outbursts in court. The senator looked stoic. He looked ahead. And when the first counts came in, 1 and 2, guilty, he nodded his head. He put his hands against his face. He put his head down. And you could just see how upset he was. But it was a very, it was a surreal moment. I mean, he's been in public office for nearly 30 years, and finally it was setting in. His sister Caridad and his daughter Alicia were sitting behind him. They had no reaction. It was almost as if they were going to keep their heads up. They had that look of dread in their face. The senator walked out right next to me, and he looked very angry. And as you heard him out here, he said his attorney says they will appeal this case. He said he never violated his public oath. In fact, during their summation, his attorney saying there was no text, no email, no recording, no audio that shows the senator taking a bribe from any of these businessmen who also were found guilty.
Christine, you have interviewed the senator before. You obviously know a great deal about his history and the politics of this. What do you expect, apart from the appeal, will be next for the senator?
You know, we don't know. I did ask him as he was leaving out here whether he was going to suspend his re-election campaign. As you know, he has spent much of the money there in that war chest of his, over $2 million, to defend himself. He did not respond to me or any other reporters here, but I think he's probably going to go home. He's going to sleep tonight, think about it. I do not see him at this moment in the coming days, and I may be wrong knowing him for over 30 years. I don't see him suspending his re-election bid just today or tomorrow. But he certainly is going to have to think about this because he has no support. There was no one in that courtroom, no politician. He was a very powerful man in this state. There was no one in that courtroom to support him, and there is no one in the state from the governor down, everyone asking him to stop his, re-election bid. So it's uncertain what he will do, but there's no way that he can run at this point. Now, they are coming back October 29th for his sentencing, and they do have until the middle of August to file motions to appeal this. And again, they are going to appeal this case.
Christine Sloan, thank you so much for your live report outside the courthouse. Let's bring back Nikole Killion and Jessica Levinson. Jessica, your reaction.
My reaction is that virtually every defendant who's convicted says, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to appeal. I will be vindicated. And that is absolutely Senator Menendez's right. But I don't know that given the charges here, given the evidence here, given the laws at issue, that we should hold our breath for a reversal on appeal. This was a strong case. The jury did not agonize for days and days about this. We now have the first senator in U.S. history who faced federal bribery charges twice. There was an earlier case that was declared a mistrial. And we have the first senator in U.S. history who has been convicted of being a foreign agent. So these are serious charges, and you need more than I disagree to be successful on appeal.
Nikole, we have heard from New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. We have heard from Senator Amy Klobuchar, New Jersey's junior Senator Cory Booker. We have heard from Majority Leader Schumer, all reiterating their calls for the senators to step down. We should remind everybody they did so upon indictment in 2023. What is the reaction on Capitol Hill? What are the ramifications of this?
Well, as you summed up there, I mean, we continue to hear senator after senator call on their colleague from New Jersey to step down. In addition to that list you mentioned, which includes Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, we have also heard from Patty Murray, who is a member of leadership, saying that she called on the senator to step down more than a year ago, or roughly a year ago, and stands by those calls. As you see, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker also saying, I called for him to resign then, and I am doing so now. So it's important to note that nearly half of the Senate Democratic caucus had called in some shape or form for the New Jersey senator to step down shortly after he was indicted last fall. But the senator has continued to maintain his innocence. And I would note that right before this trial started, I did speak with the New Jersey senator. I asked him if he had planned to testify at this trial. At the time, he said that he would do so if his lawyers felt it was necessary. He also told me at that time that he intended to be at that trial as much as possible, which he did. He was there in the courtroom day in and day out. And then I also asked him at that time how he felt that his case was being viewed relative to another Democrat, Henry Cuellar, a Texas congressman who has also been indicted in connection with bribery charges. And at that time, he told me everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So one now has to wonder what the senator's posture is now that he has been found guilty. And yes, he did defend himself again before the press as he exited court, saying that he intends to fight this, he intends to appeal. But again, hard to see how he can continue in his capacity as a U.S. senator with all of his colleagues, not all, but certainly many coming out in this short span of time, suggesting that he step down.
Jessica, which is the most serious of these convictions, and what kind of sentencing could he be looking at?
So we're looking at a series of very serious convictions dealing with bribery, honest services fraud, again, serving as a foreign agent. And we understand from reporting in New York that that's the one that he's actually the most upset about. Some of these individual charges carry up to 20 years in prison for each of these charges. And you see all of the charges here on the screen. In terms of the seriousness, I would be hard pressed to say that any of these are anything but deadly serious, in the sense that it goes to the heart of what it means to be a public servant. And that should be to serve the public and not yourself. Now, when it comes to jail time or time in prison, the prosecutors in their conference, the press conference, did not say, here's how much we are going to ask for. But you can absolutely imagine that they would ask for a very serious amount of time behind bars. Because again, this is about saying who we are as a country, that we are not the type of country that can allow people to assume a position of power, again, the head of the Foreign Relations Committee, and then use that to enrich yourself. And I think the defense will say first-time offense, we should get absolutely the minimum here. So we have to wait and see what a sentence looks like and which of and what each side decides to highlight in their sentencing memorandum.
Nikole, help us understand where we are in this moment historically.
Well, this now makes Senator Menendez the 7th, I believe, sitting U.S. Senator to be convicted of a crime. And of course, I think the ramifications remain to be seen, as we just discussed. If for some reason the senator decides not to step down or resign from his role, what, if any, steps the Senate may potentially take. I mean, we saw just last fall, for instance, the House expel Congressman George Santos, who still is pending a trial. But of course, he faced a number of different counts and had been under investigation, but his case had not yet gone to trial. In this case, we have seen a trial go forward with respect to Senator Menendez. We have now seen him be convicted. So again, one wonders if the Senate may take any action. That being said, if the senator does make a decision to resign and step aside, it also changes the calculus to a certain extent up here on Capitol Hill. Democrats have a very, very narrow majority, just a one vote advantage, 51 to 49 with respect to Republicans, although there are some independents as well that are worth noting. But that being said, most of those independents tend to caucus with the Democrats. But still, even just losing one vote could be critical for someone like Majority Leader Chuck Schumer when it comes to very key pieces of legislation. Obviously, now that we are entering more of the election season, we are not expecting a whole lot of big ticket items to come through this Congress, although government funding certainly will be one to watch in the coming months. But that being said, it does give Democrats a lesser advantage here on Capitol Hill, although Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was very clear in his statement that he believes Senator Menendez should resign.
Nikole Killion and Jessica Levinson, thank you.